What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to talk about the zero RB draft strategy. Last year, it absolutely crushed. It won people literally millions of dollars. And if it can win people millions of dollars, I have to believe it can help you win your fantasy championship. So today we're going to outline the zero RB draft strategy, how to use it in 2024, how I would be implementing it in your home leagues, and then also go through a couple of mock drafts so you can see in practice how zero RB should look in 2024. So before we get into that, if you enjoy, we put a ton of research and time into these videos. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like. Let's go. So what is zero RB? This is how I would define it in this current setup of 2024. First up, zero RB, as the name states, we are foregoing running back early. So we are drafting no running backs with the first 3 rounds. We are ideally taking an elite quarterback or tight end because, yes, zero RB means that we're not taking running backs early and we're taking wide receivers. But we also, if we're going to be punting running back and accepting that that's the weak spot on our team, we not only want strong receivers, but we want a strong quarterback and tight end. So that running back is our only key weakness. Now, to make sure we have wide receiver and flex firepower, we should be aiming for wide receivers to fill the flex plus another 1 or 2 by round 10. And the biggest point of this entire video is that you need to have these settings in the format for zero RB to work. It has to be half or full PPR. You have to be able to start 2 times as many wide receivers as running backs. So this means 2 running backs, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, 2 running backs, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, and so on. So that there's enough tipping of the scales towards wide receiver for this strategy to work. The more advantages towards receiver, right, PPR, flex spots, the better for this strategy. Now, when we talk about the philosophy of zero RB, it stems from the idea that running backs are an inherently fragile position. We saw that last year, right? Nick Chubb goes down, Eckler gets hurt, Jonathan Taylor only played 10 games. There's a ton of fragility and risk with these running backs, and historically speaking, over the last 3 years, running backs are missing 4 or more games inside of the top 24 of ADP, 1.35 times more often than your wide receivers. And then also, wide receivers are kind of king in the modern era, where if we look back at 2014 to 2018, and we just simply look at 20 plus point per game wide receivers versus running backs, then stretch it out to 22 plus points per game, 25 and 26, you can see back then, running backs are lapping wide receivers at every single stage of that high-end upside. So it used to be, okay, we know wide receivers are safer, but running backs are giving you this unmatched ceiling that wide receivers can't match. The issue is that now if we look at the last 5 years, the script has been flipped. And you can see here, over the last 5 years, wide receivers have 15, 20 plus point per game seasons to RB's 11. They have more 22 plus point per game seasons, just as many 25 plus. And then the only edge running back has is at 26 plus points per game. And that hasn't been since 2019 when Christian McCaffrey hit 29 points per game. Last year, McCaffrey hit 24. I don't know if we'll ever see a running back hit 29 or 26 plus in a given season ever again. So if wide receivers provide a higher floor than running backs and then also can match their ceiling in this new era, building your roster around early wide receivers instead of running backs is going to be a strong strategy, especially in your RB-hungry home leagues where everyone is scooping up the running backs early and allows you to just sit back and take like 2 to 3 top 12 wide receivers and just absolutely load your lineup with wide receivers. And we saw this last year, and it's why zero RB crushed. When we just look at the top 10 running backs drafted in 2023 and the top 10 drafted wide receivers in 2023, you can see this at play. I have wins above replacement here or WAR. This is just based on the replacement level player at each position. How much value over replacement are you getting from said players? Just a way of sort of putting apples to apples across positions in terms of value towards your fantasy team. Shout out to Destination Devi. That's where I get all my wins above replacement data. And you can see there is a lot of red here. I also have their PPR, their total PPR points as well, if you want to use that as a gauge here. But outside of McCaffrey in this top 10, it was brutal last year. And then you can look at the receivers. Sure, Jefferson and Kupp weren't great picks. Neither was Garrett Wilson. But there's a lot of green here, right? Tyreek Hill was a smash. CeeDee Lamb was a smash. A.J. Brown was good. Devontae Adams was good. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, just across the board, there is a higher floor. And then also outside of McCaffrey, they all outscored those other running backs. So it's just a really weird time where even if we just look at the highest scoring running backs from last year, the top 6 in terms of points per game, you have McCaffrey drafted in round 1, Kyron Williams is off of waivers. Alvin Kamara was round 6, Raheem Mostert round 12, Breece Hall round 4, Travis Etienne round 3. So 4 out of 6 of the top running backs last year were drafted outside of the top 3 rounds. And if we expand the minimum games played to like 9, Devon Achane also fits in here as like a round 9-10 pick. So the early wide receivers crushed, the late round running backs crushed outside of McCaffrey, and everyone that went 0 RB ended up with pretty damn good teams. And if we want to just zoom out from like a 3,000 foot view from last year, we can look at the top 20 players in wins above replacement, and this just kind of hammers the point home. Sure, you have CMC up top, but then you have 7 wide receivers before the next running back. And then you also have 10 of the top 20 in this list being wide receivers to just 5 running backs. And then the also important thing to note here is not just wide receiver versus running back, but the thing that we talked about in the beginning, elite quarterback and tight end matters a ton, and this shows the importance of elite quarterback and tight end, where Josh Allen, on his own, was more valuable than owning DJ Moore or Travis Etienne or Stephon Diggs or Breece Hall last year. Jalen Hurts was right there next to Travis Etienne, next to Stephon Diggs. These are really valuable players despite them being quarterbacks and tight ends. And then similar idea with Sam Laporta and the tight ends here. Sam Laporta is stuck between Stephon Diggs and Jalen Hurts. You have TJ Hawkinson and Travis Kelce right up next to Devontae Adams and Raheem Mostert, who were both solid picks last year. So if you can get some of the wide receivers in this top 20, if you can get the quarterback and tight end, and you can just sort of live off of waivers for your running back and hit on a couple of late guys, maybe a Devon Achane or a Raheem Mostert, you're really cooking. And I do want to break down the core philosophy of 0 RB before we go any further. Shout out to Sean Siegel. We've brought him up every time we talk about 0 RB. He, to me, is the godfather of 0 RB. He writes over at RotoViz. This is an article he wrote back in 2013, which is just crazy because I showed you before. 2014 and 2018 was not the environment we're seeing today. He was ahead of his time for using the 0 RB draft strategy. He's worked there forever. He doesn't even have like a Twitter. He's done some cool stuff with Pete Overzet. He actually streams every Monday morning with Pete Overzet. So I would definitely check those out. He is a very interesting guy is the best way I can put it. And this is what he said back in 2013. He said the anti-fragility of 0 RB. 0 RB is basically what it sounds like. You simply don't draft running backs in the high leverage rounds. Depending on how a draft is progressing, I would draft either one high upside running back around 4 or 5, or I will draft none at all. My preferred lineup after 5 rounds is to own 1 tight end, Jimmy Graham or Gronkowski, and 4 wide receivers. I then focus on selecting potential breakout players, the receiving back in timeshares, and backups in good offenses. You can see fairly easily how 0 RB benefits from randomness. Whenever a starting RB gets hurt, my lineup gets better. It gets better in relation to my opponents because I didn't have the player in question, and it gets better in the sense that I either own the backup or I have a shot to acquire the backup in free agency. And what he means here is that you can then stack up handcuffs on your bench so that when other people's starting running backs go down, you benefit from the chaos of the season. And what you pretty much do is you set up this team where you have strong receivers, strong quarterbacks, strong tight ends, and your only weakness is that running back, which you can pick up off waivers as the season goes on. And pretty much what happens is you have this really good lineup, and then by the time that you can find the next Kyron Williams, you pretty much have your last infinity stone, and your lineup is just a super team. And if you can't get Kyron Williams, I went back to my week 1 waiver wire article over on the Patreon, and guys who we were recommending you pick up and were available in week 1 were Jaylen Warren, Gus Edwards, Zach Moss, Devon Achane, Chuba Hubbard, Jerome Ford. Zeke Elliott was also on waivers and was a league winner down the stretch. You can 100% hit on like a late round running back in your draft, maybe 2 of them, and then also get a waiver wire ad or 2 off of waivers. And all of a sudden you have this running back room that is good enough because you built the rest of your team around that. Now I really want to hammer this point home. Do not make this mistake. A big part of 0 RB is that you need to have enough wide receivers through the flex spots. You cannot just draft through your wide receiver positions and then go willy-nilly and do whatever. You really need to make sure you are drafting a lot of receivers. And this is a really good article in 2020 by Sean Siegel, pretty much saying if you're struggling with 0 RB, you're probably not drafting enough wide receivers. And he's very much right here. If you've done 0 RB in the past and you're like, man, this doesn't work, you probably didn't draft enough wide receivers because you need to have not just wide receivers in your wide receiver spot, but wide receivers through the flex. Now, this is a really good example here. I don't want to rag on this team. This is from a high stakes draft we did on stream a couple weeks ago. And this is just a random team. I'm not going to include his name. It is a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex full PPR league. And what he did is he took 3 wide receivers at the top, and then he didn't take another one until round 13. So he sets up his team in a way that he is starting a running back in the flex in week 1. And when the whole idea of 0 RB is to have weak running backs, why would you ever want a running back in the flex? If your 3rd best running back on a team where you're weak at running back is in your flex, then your team is built poorly. So this is something you really have to understand. We need to have enough wide receivers so that you have stacked options at all times through your flex. And that's not just drafting wide receivers through your flex, but it's drafting wide receivers through your flex plus another one or two to account for injuries and bye weeks. So no matter what, at any given point in the season, you have wide receivers that are very good through your flex. And again, just so that you can not even worry about the running backs in your flex, you can then worry about the running backs in your running back spots. And the way that you can kind of really get this in your drafts or just use a golden rule is to just have wide receivers through round 10 through your flex plus one or two. So the way that you can do that is just with this. If you have 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes, that is 4 wide receiver spots. Through round 10, we want another 1 or 2. That would be 5 or 6. Same thing with 3 wide receiver, 1 flex. If it's 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, then you want wide receivers through your flex. That's 5 plus 1 or 2, which is 6 or 7. And I think that's just a good picture there if you want to screenshot it, just so you have like a guideline in the back of your head. Now, I do just want to go over one more time. We now know this. We need enough wide receivers through our flex. We need that firepower there. We are drafting no running backs through the first 3 rounds. Ideally, we want an elite quarterback and or an elite tight end. The goal should be to have enough wide receivers to fill the flex plus 1 or 2 extra by round 10 as shown on the bottom. Then again, it has to be some sort of PPR and in a format where you can start 2 times as many wide receivers as running backs. And I do want to give a big fat disclaimer before we go on here. We do not force draft strategies, all right? Zero RB, hero RB, double hero RB, they all have their pros, cons, strengths, weaknesses, settings that work for them better. None of these are the best possible draft strategy. I'm not telling you that zero RB is the number 1 draft strategy in the world and you have to use it in your home league. I am simply saying that is a really good draft strategy when done right, especially in leagues that are set up for it, and then especially in RB-hungry leagues where you can zig when others zag. So the whole premise of me doing all these draft strategy videos is so that you can go into a draft, take the best value that comes to you in a draft through the first 3 or 4 rounds, and then adapt from there. Because you never want to be in a spot where it's round 3 and the running backs on the board are all dried up and you're looking at like Kenneth Walker, who I like, versus like Nico Collins, who I have as like a 2nd round value. You shouldn't feel obligated to take a running back there. So I want to have you set up in a way where you can take the best players available early on in your drafts and then adjust from there and land the plane, as I say in my streams, where you want to take the best players up top and then you can kind of adjust your team around that so you can build the best possible team. So in order to build the best possible zero RB team, before we even get into the mock drafts, I want to show you the teams that won last year, because the title was not clickbait. Zero RB genuinely won people millions of dollars. We can look back at the Best Ball Mania 4 winner here, and he went zero RB. Now, this is over on Underdog. It is a best ball platform. Of course, if you haven't checked them out already, make sure you do. Use promo code RON. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. You can hop in there, try and win first place for $3 million like this guy did. If not, you can hop into like their $5 low stakes drafts and just get a feel for what draft boards look like right now so you can draft teams. Everyone has money on the line. Nobody's auto-drafting their players. Nobody's taking a kicker in the 3rd round. It is a great way to get yourself prepped for your home league drafts. As always, you can find that link in the description or the comment section down below and use promo code RON. Now, with this team, we can see it's built really well. He took 5 straight wide receivers. Now, yes, this is best ball, but I still think we can take a lot in terms of how he structured this team into our home league drafts. It's half PPR, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex. So he took 5 straight wide receivers. That's wide receiver through the flex plus another. And then he hammered some running backs. He took Tua, he took Freiermuth, Laporta, Jordan Love. He got Raheem Mostert late. Now, of course, when you win $3 million, you're going to hit the nuts, right? So he has Kyron Williams. He has CJ Stroud. He has Jaden Reed, James Conner, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's a really, really good team, but it's built in a way where, again, he made sure he had the wide receiver firepower through his flex spot. He really put an emphasis on the wide receivers, which is huge. Now, you might say, well, Ron, that's a best ball league. That's not going to work in my managed league, which then I present to you the FFPC main event. This is a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, full PPR tight end premium league, and this guy won $1 million. It's a managed league format with a tournament setup where it's weeks 1 through 14 in your individual 12-man league, and then you go into a playoff with hundreds of teams, and this guy ended up winning. And he had the 101 last year, and his first running back was not taken until Breece Hall in the 4th round. And then he didn't take another running back until round 8 in Zach Charbonnet, then Raheem Mostert. Then he took Kyron Williams late, Zamir White late. And it's not even like that crazy of a good team. And it just goes to show that when you structure your teams correctly, you can still win. You can still get to the playoffs. You can still get some luck to happen in the final. Because structure, when you're doing these strategies, it's just to make your team have a really high floor on top of shooting for that upside. But if it's structured in the correct way, you can still limp your way into the playoffs, and you're still set up to benefit from the variance of the playoffs. And here he goes Jefferson, T. Higgins, then Hurts, Brees, Kittle. He takes Jake Ferguson late, and this is tight end premium. So he took wide receivers through the flex, which is still fine. He didn't add the 1 or 2 because in a tight end premium format, you get that Jake Ferguson late, and you can actually stick him in your flex spot, and he's a really good start there. So he knew his format. He didn't go overboard on wide receiver. He didn't take a running back until round 4, and he still came out of here and won $1 million. Now you might say, well, Ron, this guy's Kyron Williams. Anyone who had Kyron Williams probably won their league. Well, first of all, this guy didn't take McCaffrey. You haven't seen any McCaffrey in Kyron Williams teams. But if you want to see one more, this is the NFFC Primetime. It's a $2,000 tournament managed league, and this guy won $250,000. He had Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Lamar Jackson, then Ayuk, and this is 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, full PPR. He didn't take a first running back until Dameon Pierce. Then he took Isaiah Pacheco. Then he took Devon Achane, and then he also took Zamir White at the end there. But the wide receivers were good. It was built in a great way where he took wide receivers through the flex, right? That would be Amon-Ra, Devontae, Keenan Allen, Ayuk. Then he added another in JSN by round 10. It's just a really well-structured team, and he got things to bounce his way towards the end. Now, I don't want to do any victory lapping here, but it's just a really cool moment for somebody and me who made a 0 RB draft strategy video back in 2021. It was one of my first draft strategy videos I've ever done on the channel. It did super well. 15K views back then might as well be like 100,000 views today for me, which is, I have no one else to thank but you guys for that. But you guys blew up that video, which then led me down the road of double hero RB and making all these draft strategy videos because you enjoy them so much. So it's cool to see back then people would hate on these videos. We had a comment here. No disrespect to this guy, this is a great strategy because someone has to fill my consolation bracket while letting the league-defining RBs fall to the late drafters. Much appreciated. There was a lot of that going on because it was very much an unproven draft strategy and it hadn't won anything big yet, but it's gotten much more popular. The wide receivers recently have made it a really, really good draft strategy, and it's cool to see it actually work out. It is an undeniable fact that in 2023, 0 RB absolutely crushed, and it is an undeniable fact that 0 RB is viable in any league with the settings for it to work. Now, moving on from there, let's do 2 mock drafts so we can see what these teams should look like in 2024. Now, first up, we have a very standard home league. This is what actually my home league settings are, where it's going to be half PPR, 12 teams, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex spots. It's half PPR, but you can still start 4 wide receivers to just 2 running backs in this format. Now, I picked the 102. To me, this is the most logical 0 RB spot, or one of the most logical, where you can get one of Tyreek Hill or CeeDee Lamb, and you come back around in the late second, and if the running back value is all dried up, you can just take wide receivers at that 2-3 turn. So here, we go CeeDee Lamb at the 102. If you want to go CeeDee Lamb, if you want to go Tyreek Hill, you absolutely can. For the sake of this video, we go CeeDee Lamb. I will say, Bijan and Brees are both fine picks here as well, if you would like to go a more running back heavy approach. Then we come back around to the late second. In most drafts, I would take Devon Achane here, but for the sake of this video, we take Ayuk, and then we come back around and take Nico Collins. I will say, the players don't matter as much in this video. If you would prefer Mike Evans over Nico Collins, or you would prefer Deebo Samuel over Brandon Ayuk, knock yourself out. It's just a matter of structure. So then we come back around to the 4-5 turn. We have both of our wide receiver spots filled. We have the first flex spot filled, and this is where it gets tricky. In a half PPR home league, I'm actually fine straying from wide receivers here to take a swing on one running back if you would like to. And here, we pass up on Tank Dell, we pass up on T. Higgins, and we actually take Kenneth Walker. I've been coming around on Kenneth Walker a ton, and it felt like a fine spot to take a detour here because we know we're going to get that wide receiver value later on. And then we also hammer an elite tight end in Trey McBride because we know we want to have elite tight ends and elite quarterbacks in a 0 RB build. Then we come back around, and as we predicted, the wide receiver value is here. In the late 6, we take Chris Godwin. We come back, we take Kyler Murray. So now we have an elite tight end and quarterback, and they're both stacked together. So that's really nice. Where if Trey McBride scores a touchdown, Kyler Murray also benefits from that. Then the 8-9 turn comes around, and again, wide receiver value falls to us. We have Brian Thomas Jr., who I would take as early as like the 6-7 turn. He comes to us in the late 8th, which I think in your home league is actually going to be possible here because home league isn't going to be all the way caught up on your rookie receivers, even though Brian Thomas Jr. is killing it right now. And then we actually decide we have wide receivers through the flex with Chris Godwin. Then we get one extra with Brian Thomas Jr. And again, in a home league format like this, you don't have to get that extra 2 on top. I think just 1 is honestly fine because we already started with 3 wide receivers at the top. So we have wide receivers through the flex plus 1 by round 10. And then we take Javonte Williams. So our running back spots, Kenneth Walker and Javonte Williams, are actually pretty solid there. And then we come back around in the 10th. And from here on, we're just going to take running back flyers and we're going to take wide receiver upside swing. So we take Rico Dowdle. He's in a timeshare backfield. If he's the RB1 in Dallas, he's a guy we can start on a weekly basis. We have Jerome Ford, who can give us some points early on in the season before Nick Chubb returns. Then we have Dontavion Wicks, my favorite upside swing at wide receiver right now in drafts outside of the top 10 rounds. And then Jalen Wright, a crazy upside pick. That's kind of a handcuff where you need a Raheem Mostert or a Devon Achane injury for him to really pop. But his upside is crazy. He looked like a beast in the preseason. He has everything that Mike McDaniel is looking for. So this is how I would build a 0 RB team in this format. You can see, you don't have to get all that extreme, right? We kind of just let the board fall to us. We have Kyler, then we have Kenneth Walker. Let me actually move this down a little bit. We have Javonte, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, Trey McBride, Nico Collins, Chris Godwin, Brian Thomas Jr. off the bench, Rico Dowdle, Jerome Ford, Dontavion Wicks, and Jalen Wright. And to me, this is a really fun, balanced team that is set up so that if you can find a stud off of waivers, you can put him in the running back spot. You're going to have wide receiver firepower for bye weeks and injuries when they come, and your team is just set up in a really, really good way. And to me, this is a really good kind of curveball where if you have to fall back on 0 RB in this setup, you absolutely can. Now, the next draft we're going to show is actually a real $350 draft we streamed on this channel. We stream every single night. I go live. I schedule it about an hour before I go live every single night from now through NFL kickoff. So if you want to see me draft these high stakes teams, underdog teams, that'll all be on the channel. You just have to look for the live streams. They go live every night. And you can also find them if you have the notification bell on for the channel. And here, I did want to say as well, it's not a mock draft. I think mock drafts are great, but I'm also drafting against a CPU, or you can draft in a free league versus other people, and even then, it's not a great read. This is real money on the line, a real draft here. It is 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, full PPR, 6-point passing touchdowns, and it's a managed league. So to me, I think that this is what a home league that's full PPR, 3 wide receiver, and 1 flex would look like, and I think it's a good showing. So let me know for the next strategy video, do you guys care if I show real drafts, or do you want it to just be mock drafts on Sleeper? I'm very curious. So with this team, we're out here and we take Jefferson at the 108. We come back around and we take Olave. We knew it was going to be a wide receiver hungry room. I could have taken one of the running backs, right? I do like Kyron. I do like ETN, but not this early. I love HN, but he went at the 201. And then we also knew it was 3rd round reversal. So maybe a running back could come falling back the other direction, but it didn't happen. So we ended up going Nico Collins. Now we have wide receivers through our wide receiver spots. We come back around, we take Tank Dell. I will say as well, people love to hate when I take 2 pass catchers from the same offense. 2 pass catchers in the same offense is very much fine, especially when it's the Texans, who are going to be top 10 at worst in passing yards, passing touchdowns, passing efficiency across the board. I'm absolutely fine with that. And then we come back around and we get in our elite quarterback in a 6-point passing touchdown league, CJ Stroud. So now we're set up where we're shooting for maximum upside here. We have 2 wide receivers attached to CJ Stroud. We get a 6-point passing touchdown that kind of boosts Stroud in this format. And anytime that he throws a passing touchdown to Nico Collins or Tank Dell, my team is going to be amazing that week. Then after that, we come back around, we take George Kittle, and now we have wide receivers through our flex. We have elite quarterback and elite tight end, which means it's time to switch gears to running back. We take Najee, then we come back around, we take Brian Robinson. You can take whoever you want here. You could have talked me into like James Conner over Najee Harris. No, James Conner already went. You could have talked me into Warren over Najee, Javonte Williams over Najee. We come back around, we take Brian Robinson. If you want to take a Zach Moss there or whatever, go ahead. Again, it's really just a structure thing. Then we get an absolute gift, and we get Xavier Worthy. So now we have wide receivers through our flex, +1 through round 10, and a really good +1, where this was before the Hollywood Brown injury. So that is a massive value, and now our wide receivers are absolutely stacked. So then we just hammer running backs the rest of the way. We take Rico Dowdle, then Marshawn Lloyd, who not looking great. But then we get Ray Davis, we get Antonio Gibson, we get a flyer on Jalen Polk, some rookie wide receiver upside there, then Tyrone Tracy, Khalil Herbert, a backup tight end. It's a 20-round draft, so there's a lot of stuff that we're drafting here. But you can see this is roughly the structure I would be going for in a home league, where we have wide receivers through the flex, +1 by around 10, right? We took 4 straight receivers. You don't have to get that +2. Sometimes it'll be overkill, and that's why we didn't take that second one. We made sure that we're firing off at running back because we didn't take a detour for that Kenneth Walker. So here, we really got to be working waivers. We really got to hit one of those late round guys. And I think that this team is set up for that to happen. So that is going to do it for this video. We went over what zero RB is. We went over how you can use it in 2024. We went over why it crushed in 2023, the people who won millions of dollars off of it in 2023, and how you can use it in your home leagues. If you want access to my rankings that I use for these drafts, I used it on that high stakes draft where it set me up for a zero RB build. You can find those rankings on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I'll link in the description and the comment section down below. And on there, I have all of my rankings kind of through the mindset of these strategies we talk about, where all of the good running back profiles that have that legendary upside are pushed up early. The wide receivers are in that dead zone area, and it sets you up in a way where you might just take the best wide receivers early and it'll set you up for a zero RB build, or maybe it'll set you up for a double hero RB build, the way that you draft with it. But it's just a way of prioritizing the RBs in the dead zone that I like, prioritizing the running backs early that I like, and then making sure that you're filling wide receiver through your flex spot by pushing up those really good wide receiver profiles, but then also bringing down, like I have guys like Rashid Shaheed, and who are those other guys like Jacoby Myers, all buried in my rankings. Because if I had those guys in my flex spot, then I probably did a really poor job drafting. So you can find all of that at patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.
VVS stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, ice around my body like I'm frozen.